you're like me, and you got no life and there's nowhere to go, then tune in to the Animation Truman Show. You'll be glad you did.
And you will. You will be so happy. Good morning, Max Power. You will be so thrilled with yourself for having tuned in to the best show on YouTube. There is none better than the Animation Truman Show. You know, if you're into animation. Okay, so what's the agenda this morning? I actually decided to live stream because I was thinking, and as you can see from the title, I was thinking about business ideas, and I had an idea that occurred to me that I wanted to share with you guys. I'm sort of speaking to you guys as somebody who's been in business by himself and for himself for 3 decades. I've kind of seen a lot of things come and go in the business space, and when you're looking at approaching a business, a lot of times people that want to enter a field and participate in some way, creatively, or to try and prosper in some way, they approach it in a variety of different ways, and some of them, for me personally, make a lot of sense, and some kind of don't. So anyway, we'll get to that, but basically this is the agenda right here. And I'll make a couple of these items pretty quick. I wonder if Maria's here this morning. Well, when Maria shows up, I need to let her know that I need to be hitting her up for a new voiceover for webisode 4. Because Carliana, well, as you can see here from Krita, Carliana features kind of prominently in webisode 4. And Carliana was voiced by the lovely and gracious Maria Torres. So I'm going to need her to pop in for another voiceover. Okay, so anyway, first thing on the agenda is the Ed interview. Okay, so if the Ed being Ed Hooks, author of the book Acting for Animators, which, as I mentioned in the live stream yesterday, initially I couldn't say for sure that I recommended the book, actually, until I read the darn thing. And so I would say this: it's a book that probably belongs on the bookshelf of any fledgling animator. And so this is Ed Hooks. You guys can Google him if you want to and check out his book. I'm sure he may not be plugging the book very aggressively when I interview him, but I think I probably will be, But our expectation is we're nailing down the time, and it looks like it's probably going to be next Saturday. I actually checked in with Ed today because he was live streaming this morning, and I asked him if he's going to be live streaming on Saturday mornings on a regular basis because I really don't want to step on his live stream. And he said, I don't believe he's basically doing it once a month. So, sorry, that's a boo-boo. So this is my expectation, but I will issue an announcement when it's carved in stone. But my thinking is it's probably going to be next Saturday, 9 or 10 a.m., sort of mid-morning. And my thinking was we'll allocate 30 minutes, and if it's flowing nicely, we get good questions, we're having a good time, then it could go as long as a couple hours. So that should be quite interesting. It'll be fun to talk in depth with Ed about his work over the years and some of the things he sees in the work. Particularly, I would think in the work of. I'll get back to your question here in half a second, Max. What's going to be interesting to me is going to be the sort of couple things. One is the mistakes potentially that young animators could make, or fledgling animators, you're not necessarily young, but learning the craft. What are some ways that you might go sideways? My suspicion would be that it would be in trying too hard to adhere to the conventions of animation that you've seen in shows that you like, versus learning some things about the craft of acting to inform your animation so that you sort of develop your own voice, right? Which kind of actually speaks to the business stuff in a way, because of the tug of war I'm going to talk about here in a moment between a top-down approach a focus on originality or a bottom-up approach. And I should, just so I don't forget my train of thought here, I'm going to write Patreon here. That doesn't make any sense to you guys, but I know what that means. And this will make sense, and I think you guys are going to find this discussion quite helpful. And maybe give you some ideas that'll get you enthused about projects of your own. So, to answer Max's question, no, she doesn't have an evil voice, although I'm sure she could if I asked her to. You need to go back and watch Salt and Light webisode 2, because that's the one where Maria's voice featured prominently, actually playing two roles. She played the role of the, she played Carliana, and she also played the villager lady. So here you have.
There you are.
Bless you, Asher. I wish we didn't need the help, but with the king's taxes so high...
Oh,
So that's Maria. And, you know, and I kind of throw this out there by way of encouragement to you guys. And it also, by the way, totally speaks to what I'm going to get to when I talk about a bottom-up approach to finding business opportunities. This will make sense. When you look at what really happened here, okay, and I'll show you, Max, what I'm talking about. So here's Carliana. Again.
Remember who you are, Tianara.
that's rough. Am I right?
We have so much.
I have heard enough. Boulder.
So you can see that she gives the character a little bit of an edge, but initially my thinking was that when Carliana notices Tianara being kind to the poor blind man, I didn't want to play her as angry at Tianara and mean. I wanted to play her as baffled. She's an entitled, wealthy woman who really just doesn't understand why anyone would ever give money to the poor, you know, with nothing in return kind of thing, right? So I thought the way she played her worked out really well. And so anyway, Carliana comes back in the next episode. But what I'm talking about, what happened here is that, I mean, here we have a situation, you guys, where here I am live streaming on YouTube, and Maria's just here. You know, she's just a person who comes around. And I think it's significant to consider that by being open and being friendly and you know, we just kind of connected a little bit. I learned that she had some experience with acting and stuff, and I said, you know, hey, give it a poke, you know, if you want to try the voice or whatever, send me a WAV file. And she took it on her own initiative to go ahead and record it, and it was good. You know, I'm like, wow, Maria, this is really, I could definitely use this. And so just that human connection is what solved the problem for me of needing a voice for Carliana. And so again, it'll make sense here in a moment how this kind of ties in with your goal, I assume you have, as an animator, to craft opportunities for yourself. Okay? So Max says it's nicely done. The accent is not American. Right, it's like an American accent that's got the slightest hint of erudite, very slight, I mean like 3 to 4% hint of sort of that erudite British nose up in the air kind of attitude. Not to pick on the British, because I love British voices, and frankly I've been known to speak in one from time to time, and there are many different dialects of British English that I have tremendous affinity for and love to speak with those sorts of voices. You know, unless I'm being, it's tempting to start dicking around with voices here, but that's not really my intent today. So I'll leave it at that. I'll just pull out a Darren T line and say, hello, friends. Okay, so Webisode 4 backgrounds is agenda item number 2, and that's going to be something I'm probably going to be sliding into here while I'm talking about topic number 3. The backgrounds, it's really nothing to it, actually. We've got Webisode 4 that I'm cranking through right now, and honestly, most of the animation's done. I'm really happy with what I'm seeing, and now it's very niggly little stuff. Really, it's time to work on the soundtrack. But I figured first I'll go through this sequence, and I'm just defocusing the backgrounds. So no big deal. I'm just basically adding a little bit of blur to these backgrounds, so they sort of sit in the mix better. Hey, Maria. Okay, cool. So you noticed probably that I mentioned you. This is on the agenda today, and I'm glad you showed up because I just wanted to mention I'm going to need to send you the scripting for webisode 4 because Carliana features, as you can see, Carliana features heavily in webisode 4, and so I'm going to have to hit you up for another voiceover. Okie dokie. I figured that probably wouldn't be a problem. And so that's that. Have fun at the play, and when you have to duck out, no big deal. Okay, the fourth thing on the agenda today will be webisode 5 review, which means I don't want to get into the audio and soundtrack music stuff here live today. That may happen this week, but I think the better agenda, if we get to it, which we may not, is just scanning through webisode 5. The truth of the matter is, webisode 5 looks pretty darn good. A lot of this stuff was animated more recently. It just feels better, looks a little tighter, yada, yada, yada. And so my projection that we will have 5 webisodes and be ready for, after some period of time, which probably won't be very long. Actually, what's probably going to wind up happening is they're going to get pulled back off of YouTube and then go to distribution. So I need to reconfigure with my film distributor and make sure everybody's on board with what we're doing and make sure there's no hiccups that interfere with that plan. But that has been the plan for quite some time. So that's what I'm expecting to do. So webisode 5 review. See you later, Kyle. My son's going off to work. So webisode 5 review is just kind of looking over what's coming in webisode 5 on the animation and drawing front and making sure I'm happy with what I see. Okay, so now the topic that I decided to live stream about today, and thank you, Maria, for your comment there, standing by. I appreciate it. I'll get my act together and probably get a script to you in the next day or two, I would expect. Okay, business stuff. What am I talking about? Well, I want to, you guys indulge me here because I think you'll be glad if you do. If you're a fledgling animator, the kinds of questions that you're asking yourself, as I've said many times here on the live stream, is as a young person in particular, you're really looking at your goals with a lot of uncertainty. Some of the uncertainty is internal, and it's got to do with permission. In other words, your emotional health and whether you actually feel like you deserve to achieve whatever it is you think your goal is. And then the other problem is it in fact possible? So the problem with what's possible for you, the permissible part really is all internal, and you got to decide that you basically have enough ego and strength of purpose to not really care what anyone else thinks and go after what's important to you. And I think it's a really, really important thing to do. It will cost you in some cases. Some people will disagree with you. It will cost you in some cases relationships. But at the end of the day, you're going to look back on your life and you're going to be much happier if you chase your own muse and trust yourself. Okay? Now that doesn't mean that your efforts shouldn't be informed by an intelligent look at the industry or the job market or what's hot on YouTube. Those questions are all absolutely important, and they should fold into your plans. But don't just go along with the crowd because you think that's what you should do, particularly if you're not enjoying that path. For me, there's a lot of things about the various paths in life that just don't work for me. There was a point many years ago where I could have grown my business a lot bigger than I did. And I decided that keeping it small was the right path for me. And so that's neither right nor wrong, but that's the decision I made, and basically I don't regret it. I really don't regret it. So anyway, so when I talk about a top-down approach, you're sitting here and you're saying to yourself, okay, I want to be an animator, or I want to be a creator, right? Then the question is, what do I do? And it's partly a creative problem of getting your work out there and cultivating opportunities in some way, and maybe hopefully being popular with whatever content you produce. And it's also partly, you might be thinking that you want to get a job in the industry. Nothing wrong with that, if that's what floats your boat. Some people thrive in a group setting, a team dynamic. Some people are more like me, where they tend to be more independent. And I look at collaboration with what I call the bubbles principle. Okay, so this is parenthetical to my main discussion, but this is what the bubbles principle is. The bubbles principle, I invented it, so the bubbles principle says that each of us as a creative soul, or as a competent practitioner of whatever it is we do, we're basically floating around here in the air like a bubble floating up through the air. And generally, your responsibility and your best path probably is mostly all about you. You might have a job, or you might do a collaboration, but basically your life is mostly about you. But every once in a while, I would say, be aware that this is very rare. It's very rare that this actually happens, but every once in a while, you get a situation where there's this synergy that really makes sense, and you bump into one of the other bubbles, and for a period of time, the two join together and become one. And the thing you want to remember about that is that can be a really, really cool thing, but remember, what always happens sooner or later is that the bubble pops. So usually those types of relationships, if you look at it as something that's probably not likely to last for necessarily a long time, then you can have a great time with it without it resulting in all kinds of pain when the bubble ultimately pops, because it's almost sure that it will. Every once in a while it doesn't. Sometimes you get these partnerships like, I won't, necessarily, Joseph Barbera and Bill Hanna, sometimes you get a situation where you have a partnership that just has the right balance of talent and power that it can sustain for many, many decades. But that's rare, right? So anyway, the top-down approach to the industry asks these sorts of questions. Well, I want to do anime, so let's say, or I want to do cartoons for Cartoon Network, or I want to be an original creator. Where do I go in the industry to get attention, have people notice me, or give me an opportunity, et cetera, et cetera? Where do you go? Where do you do that? And those are fair questions. Okay. Marie says eventually your own bubble will burst as well. Well, that's true, but I would look at it more this way. I would look at it. Remember, I've talked many times about the 2 to 8 year cycle. That is really, it's just a natural feature of many things about life. If I decide tomorrow that I'm going to become a saxophone player, I'm going to go from the 4 steps of unconsciously incompetent, which means I suck and I don't know how bad I suck. I'm not even aware, right? That would be the first step. The next step is to become consciously incompetent, where I suck and I realize how bad I suck because I've learned enough to be aware. That's the hardest stage. That's why most businesses fail at about that stage. Businesses or people give up on trying to lose weight or whatever. Once you get educated just enough to realize how awful you are, that's when discouragement can really kick in. If you can get through that to stage 3, you become consciously competent, where you've actually gained enough craft that you're reasonably good at what you're doing. And you know your strengths and your weaknesses, and so then you give more attention to your weaknesses and kind of ride on the coattails of your strengths, and you just tend to develop as an artist. So what tends to happen, I submit, is that you can get to stage 3 in almost anything in about 2 years. And then to get from stage 3 to stage 4, which is unconsciously competent. Okay, so stage 4 is when you don't even think about it. It's so natural for you that you just can do it, and do it at a very high quality level. To get from here to here takes, somewhere between 2 and 8 years. So you can get to the point in anything where you're competent enough to go out and make money with it, let's say, in about 2 years, I submit. Assuming you work on it fairly regularly, you get the training, the education, the practice. And then to get to elite status is going to take another 6 years on top of that. So, I look at the bubbles principle as the bubble of yours that can pop is a bubble which represents one cycle of this. And the most likely collaborations that make sense are probably going to be situations where you have one set of skills, like maybe you're an animator, and then a good example would be you team up with, somebody like Yvette, or somebody, I guess ostensibly like me, who's a composer, maybe who's going to deal with music. So this would be Yvette, I say, for writing. Right? So if you can find the synergy of working with someone who balances you out in some way, that actually also increases the chances that the relationship can continue for a long time. Now, what will happen in practice is you'll come together and then you'll separate for a while. And then when the right project comes along, you'll join back up again. And it's all good. That's how life goes. So anyway, my thesis today, if you will, is that the top-down approach is generally not the greatest approach for you guys. And the reason for that is that if you're going to seek a job, there's a reasonably good chance that you will get a job if you're pretty good at what you're doing or whatever. And then looking back at this 2 to 8 year plan, the truth is there's going to be a period of time where these principles, the bubbles principle and the 2 to 8 year plan, where these things all come into play to make it such that whatever situation you get, it might last a long time, but whether you'll be happy with it for a long time is kind of questionable. It can work. People have careers, and it's all good. But here on YouTube, what I would say falls in between the idea of working with... So the top-down approach basically has two manifestations. Okay, so let's go over here and say the two manifestations, I'm speaking real generally here, would be a job, or it would be, if you're really good at what you do, let's call it also a collaboration, if I can get my spelling right here. So in other words, those who are already in the industry, who already are making money, already creating, properties, already secure in their situation, for some reason, they do what? They notice you. And they're intrigued by you, and they give you, and they maybe engage with you, or you initiate with them in order to craft some kind of opportunity. Nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful thing. The challenge is that by definition, these people are probably, for the most part, much better than you. Okay, so that's not a problem, because if you're talented, they may notice you, and for whatever reason, they may actually have a reason. In other words, they may sort of start carrying your flag for you because they like your work or whatever, and that can lead to some neat opportunities. However, you got to really work at that. Why? Because the truth of the matter is that the people that are already in the industry and successful are, by definition, busy doing what they're doing. Jimmy Webb made this point in his book that I have on my bookshelf called Toonsmith, and it's about the art and craft and business of songwriting. And what he points out is that for most fledgling songwriters, it's kind of naive to think you're going to send a recording of your song to a successful songwriter, and they're going to be so blown away by it that they're going to go start pitching your song for you to either publishers or artists or whatever. Well, in other words, why would they do that? Usually they're kind of busy trying to pitch their own songs. If somebody's going to get the gig, they want to get the gig. They don't. Why would they give it to you? It can happen, but it's a real long shot gamble to actually have that situation work out. So that's my read on the top-down approach. And where it all leads you is that this is your most likely opportunity, and it's going to be a low-level opportunity potentially that you're going to hate after a while, depending on what you wind up being paid to do. But it also can be a foot in the door to greater opportunities too. A lot of it depends on you. So now that's a key point. The key point about whether this works or not is that it is all up to you to take the situation you found yourself in and make the most of it in some way and craft even bigger and better and more interesting opportunities from that. Okay? Put a pin in that. Put a pin in that concept, and now let's go back here. The middle of the road would be the originality. You're a creator who says, no, I don't care about working in the industry. In fact, I want to discover my own voice. I want to create original content. I have no interest at all in being a slave, on someone else's program. I want to run my own ship. Okay, so now if you're really, really enormously talented, you can pull that off and that can work out great. But what often happens to these people is they're in a space like here on YouTube, and so then what they do is they begin to supplement that vision with things like Patreon and other kinds of ways of raising revenue. So this is not a knock on guys like Howard Wimshurst, for example. Howard is a talented animator, but I do submit that if Howard was making a good living doing animation, then he wouldn't be creating courses, he wouldn't be selling courses and doing the Patreon thing and all the rest. People who are really busy actually doing the work don't tend to need to go fundraise. Sometimes they do. Depends on the scope of the project, but usually if it's going to be successful and like earth-shatteringly, impactful, it's going to be because they actually have a hybrid between these two situations where they're a really talented person who teamed up with other people that already have a foot in the door in the industry, and then what happens? The bubbles principle kicks in, and then collectively they do a Kickstarter or whatever with lots of promotional support. And then as a result of that dynamic, they're able to actually get awareness up to the point where they're able to raise enough money to actually fund an industry quality production. Okay, so that's what happened with Studio Trigger, with Little Witch Academia, for example. They did a crowdfund. I think they made I can't remember if it was $200,000 or $600,000, but they raised enough money to fund the Little Witch Academia. You can call it a movie, but I think the first one was like 40 minutes or something. But so that business model worked for them. So now, having kind of talked about these two different ideas, let's explore an idea that could actually be very eye-opening and democratizing, if you will, for people like you guys that you may not have thought of. Okay? Now, Amar will have thought of it, so once I tell you what the idea is, he's going to start adding some comments about he's already thought about that and done something similar in the past. I'm betting so. And he won't be lying. It's, that's because Amar's been around for a while, and he's kind of been up and down and back and forth. So, but this is my concept I wanted to throw out at you guys that I thought of this morning, is this. Think about the people that have the characteristics of this. They're embedded in the industry, and they've got a strong following, but they're not in the anime industry. They're not necessarily in an industry where you are effectively either a competitor or a nuisance. In fact, where would those people be who actually might be very interested in what you have to offer? Okay? In other words, you're basically trying to craft your own opportunity, and you're trying to be smart about it. What I'm telling you guys is, if I was starting clean right now, if I was starting all over, and I didn't write my own scripts and have my own concepts, and I wanted to craft an opportunity, what would I do? This is what I would do. And by the way, parenthetically, you could go to, I mentioned Yvette earlier, you could go to a book author. That would not be a horrible idea. Because you go to a book author with certain types of genres and say, hey, I'm interested in turning your book into a cartoon. Even if it's a web-based model where you're just doing kind of like what I do so far with Salt and Light, where you're releasing 1 minute every 2 weeks or something like that. That's fine. It doesn't matter. There's no right answer. But then you ask yourself this question: is there a model already in place that actually resembles that? That's well established? Well, there is. And here's what it is, folks. This is it. This is what I would do if I was starting clean. You got hundreds of authors doing webtoons, many of which are really, really good. And so let's just say, okay, I picked this. I would venture to say that a lot of the authors, because if you're going to build an audience with a webtoon, you think about it, you're talking about this is the economical alternative to creating a cartoon, because you're just dealing with still frames. You eliminated the animation element, right? But essentially every episode of a webtoon is, for all practical purposes, a storyboard for your cartoon, right? Wow, I just happened upon a chick in a bathtub. Didn't plan that. But so the people that become relatively successful creating this kind of stuff certainly are probably well connected through, your Instagrams and various platforms. So they're accessible to a degree. They're probably, a lot of them are accessible. Some of them aren't. Some of them are so successful and so busy that they don't even want to, hear from you. But I will bet you any amount of money that in this one page of previews, I could find several authors who are in that mid-tier where they're relatively popular, but they're not like big time yet, maybe. Where if you reached out to this person and said, look, what I'm interested in doing is a proof of concept where I take your webtoon and I actually turn it into a cartoon. I'm only gonna create 30 seconds, so let's call it a trailer. It's a proof of concept to basically prove out whether a collaboration makes sense. And your mindset is that the basis of the collaboration is that this person already has an audience. The audience is already there. And it's an audience that is highly incentivized to be very interested in developing the anime audience. There are some glitches. I mean, if I was a webtoon creator, the immediate glitch would be this. Number one, you've got to show me that you can do good work. Number two, I have to have the assurance that things like the voices and the overall tone of the animation are going to be consistent with what I've, the level of quality and the tone or style that I've already established with my audience. So the reason I said that this is a democratizing thing is because if you pursue this path, you're in the same position with this individual creator that you would be in if you were pursuing a job in the industry, actually, which is that you have to prove yourself. So there's no hiding behind being a wizard with whatever software you use. There's no hiding behind all the crap you've done in the past. None of it matters. If I approach this author and I say I've got a concept, then it's incumbent upon me to deliver the goods and sell them on the fact that I'm going to represent their thing well. And so what's in it for me? Basically that pre-baked audience. That's what's in it for me. And I'm guessing maybe another point Amar is going to make is that doesn't that also suggest that for you as a creator and me as a creator, would it make sense for me right now to take 2 days and turn everything that I've done so far on Salt and Light into a dozen episodes of Webtoon? Well, there's no reason not to, other than the time it takes, actually. There's no harm in that. It can only help. And I'm thinking about it. Because if you look at this, you got, I'm not sure how long one issue or episode of this tends to be. The other reason I said it's democratizing is we've talked a little bit, see again back here, you go back to this originality, those of us who really, sort of camp out on the fact that, well, I would never want to copy. We've had this discussion. Darren and I have had some back and forth about it. All good, but about whether it's wrong to trace. This question has come up on the live stream and on Discord. Is it wrong to trace good work as opposed to copying it or just coming up with something original? Well, think about what would happen in this scenario. Now you're dealing with reality, folks. This isn't theory. If I'm turning this person's art into a webtoon or into an animation, there is no option. I have to accurately reproduce what they've done. And that's a really, really good discipline for me to have as a creator, because do you think if you get a job for Warner Brothers, are you going to be the guy that gets to come in and say, wow, we're going to draw Bugs Bunny in a new, fresh way? Yeah, you might be. You might be that one person who comes along every 30 years when they reboot the character and comes up with a better idea. But you're not. You're not going to be that guy or that girl. No. If you're going to actually engage in a situation where you have the potential to have a collaboration that actually gives you an audience on a silver platter, then you have to start thinking like a responsible creator that's on a team where you've got to comply with the standards that are already established by that property. And so this is a perfectly practical example of why I don't get down on people for tracing or copying in some cases. The truth of the matter is, in your day-to-day grunt job doing your work as an animator, it's probably actually what you have to do and don't even have a choice 9 out of 10 times. And then over time, your talent will emerge and you'll be trusted with more and more latitude, right? So anyway, that's my premise is this. If you guys are, and see, the thing about it is, another reason why I say this is democratic is because those of you who don't have the skill, talent, or discipline to pull this off are going to find out in a real fast hurry. You're going to find out how good or bad you really are very quickly by beginning to engage with people that are in a complementary industry. This is not competing with you. This is totally complementary. There's thousands of them to pick from. Thousands and thousands to pick from. And they're all different styles. They're very good. So my question for you guys is, what in the heck is stopping you from reaching out to, I'm just picking this out of a hat here, what is stopping you from reaching out to Chris McCoy or McKay? I can't read that. My eyes don't work as well as they used to be. And saying, hey, dude, I love what you're doing on Webtoons. If I created an animated version, is it possible that maybe we could craft some sort of collaboration that would help you expand your audience and help me advance my career as well? What is stopping me from doing that? Well, I can tell you what's stopping me from doing that is, number one, I'm afraid to do it. That's one reason. I'm intimidated. I don't want to approach this really, really skilled person that, that is one reason, frankly, especially if you're a younger person. You don't really have a good, strong sense of yourself yet. That's okay. It's perfectly natural. So that's one thing that can stop you. Another thing that could stop you is you don't want to bother them, right? Number three, you're not really sure you actually have the skill to pull it off. Okay, well, let's look at all the above. If I was looking for if I was looking to come in the side door, what would I do? I'd look at Kip Trevor's cartoon. This is what I would do, is if I wanted to come in the side door, I would actually grab this person's episode and I would do 30 seconds of animation without even asking them. If you wanted to play it really safe, you then post it on YouTube as an unlisted or private video. You send it to Kip and say, hey Kip, look, this is what I'm doing. I really love your webtoon, and so I did this on my own initiative because I just wanted to show you what this could be if it was animated. Is this something you're interested in, like, talking about, kind of doing more with? And you know what? Give it 10 attempts. Everything in sales, is kind of the law of, I actually look at sales as the law of 100. The law of 100 is that I could be selling anything, including refrigerators to Eskimos, and I will find at least one person out of 100 that'll do it. Unless it's like the stupidest idea in the world, you can find one person out of 100. You know, if you're approaching a marketplace where, again, it's not completely stupid. In other words, if I approach 100 webtoon creators, I guarantee you I'm going to find one really good relationship and probably 5 or 6 okay ones. I will guarantee you, you will find them. So now it's just a question of trying. You know, you just get out there and try it. And so what I'm doing here today is I'm just handing you guys on a silver platter as a business person, you know, as a guy that's been able to make a living for 30 years, working by myself, for myself, doing creative work, often in the commercial space, obviously, but also with filmmaking. And if, you know, I'm saying with my experience, if I was going to approach the animation industry today, fresh and clean, and try to just start over, so Salt and Light doesn't exist, this is what I would do. This is exactly what I would do. And I would not try to get the attention of the industry. I wouldn't waste my time. Because they're busy, and the thing is, if you do this, think about this, you guys. If you do what I'm talking about, do you think just maybe all of a sudden, if you do a good job, that you're going to start getting some attention from this side? Do you think? Of course you will. There's almost no doubt in my mind that that would happen. If you wind up sucking, then you won't. You know? And this could wind up, in my case, this could happen with Salt and Light. It could turn out that you know, those who are, you know, would have some sort of interest in it might look at what I'm doing and go, you know, the guy's doing, you know, it's kind of interesting what he's doing, but it's really not that good. And so, you know, we'll pass for now. That could happen. Of course that could happen. That's okay. So anyway, okay, I'm going to pause now and start looking at the background images that I'm going to defocus here. And then go ahead and look at the comments and questions. Okay, so give me a second because I'm rolling back up to the top on the comments here. And trough of disillusion, that path is called. I've never heard that term. Yeah, messed up stage 3, unconsciously competent. No, stage 4. Max, stage 4 is unconsciously competent. That's where you're so good with your craft that you don't even have to think about it. You just do it, and you know good from bad, and you generally crank out good effortlessly, more or less, because you're a master. So stage 3 is consciously competent. That's where you've become a competent practitioner, but you're also aware of your weaknesses, and you're still working on them. The hardest stage for most people is going to be stage 2. And as I've said before, I actually had a video, a live stream about this one time where I showed you how these map together. The path of a human being's emotional health, or a business path, or the attainment of craft or skill in any area all follow the same 4-step path. And by the way, that 4-step path can be likened to the 4 acts of a movie. You know, Act 1, Act 2 and 3 tend to run together, and then, you know, Act 4, and then you got your midpoint. If you actually look at the hero's journey or other filmmaking, script writing paradigms, you'll find that there's actually quite a parallel between real life and the sort of what you pack into 90 minutes or 110 minutes in a movie. But this is the hardest step. You're consciously incompetent. Let me make a couple points about this that are very interesting. You know, have you guys ever dealt with the guy that is trying to sell you a used car, and he's obviously a total shyster and doesn't know anything about cars at all, but he's happy as a clam and he's very enthusiastic, and he actually makes sales because he just transfers his enthusiasm to his customers? Okay? That's this guy. That's this guy. He's unconsciously competent. It's actually, when you start a business, for example, when you start the business, you say, well, I'm going to start a bagel joint downtown. because everybody loves bagels, and everybody will go there. It'll be great. Okay? And you don't know anything about running a bagel business. You don't know anything about business at all. All you know is you like bagels. Okay? That's stage one. It's when you pick up a guitar and just the fact that some sound comes out of it turns you on. You don't realize how bad you suck. This is not, some people go through their whole life here, and I don't even think that's necessarily a criticism. Because these are the people who are blissfully unaware of how bad they suck. And they're happy. I said blissy, I meant blissfully. Okay? The problem is if you're a person who cares about doing well or getting good at whatever it is you do, and I certainly am that kind of person, then the hard stage is this one, because this is where all of a sudden you still suck, because anything you try to do, like if you're trying to learn to play a guitar or you're trying to learn animation, it is all exactly the same as building muscle. It's like bodybuilding, and I know this because I've been lifting weights every day since New Year's Day 1983. Okay? I know about building muscle. And the thing about building muscle that people have got to understand, it's the same with dieting. What they've got to do is they've got to take the long-term view. You've got to know that whatever craft you're trying to practice, or if you're trying to pack on muscle, you have to understand that you can only ever go just so fast. You just can only progress so fast. And if you don't understand that, you're going to go take a bunch of steroids and you're going to do 8-hour training sessions, and you're probably going to injure yourself. There's a lot of things that are going to go wrong because you're in a hurry for the results. I'm sorry, friends. This 2 to 8 year path, which by the way looks about like this. This is 2 years and then this is 6. There is no way around it, okay? If you're going to pursue the Webtoons path, like I suggested, might be a good idea for some of you, you're probably somewhere between these two steps. You're somebody who's become you've gone from consciously incompetent to consciously competent. You're somewhere in here. You've gone from sucking and knowing how much you suck to actually being pretty good at what you do, but you're well aware of what your weaknesses are. This is what happens in business as well. You open the bagel shop, and then what happens is you discover in stage 2 all the things you didn't understand about maintaining inventory. You find out to your dismay that the type of bagels that all of your customers love is exactly the kind of bagel that you hate, right? Everything about the business starts turning upside down because everything you didn't know you start to realize. And now you have a dark night of the soul because you're not really sure you actually want to be in the business after all, in the form that the business has to take in order for you to succeed. This is a tough stage right here, guys. The good news is you will get through it if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to practice, if you're willing to adapt. Okay? If you're open, you can get through it. Then you get to this point where, again, you're competent, your bagel business is starting to make money, you realize we're probably going to be okay, this is going to work. But there's still plenty of challenges, okay? And one of the challenges, by the way, is that you realize that in your dream bagel business, you're gonna actually franchise and you're gonna branch it out into a bunch of locations. You're gonna open a bunch of locations, okay? So then what happens is you realize if we're gonna achieve that goal, which was not even on my mind at the start, wasn't even on your mind, but as you became more and more aware of both your weaknesses and figured out how to turn them into strengths, you discovered that if you really wanted to get to your real goal, you're not happy just making bagels anymore because you personally have grown. You've grown and changed through the process. So you're no longer blissfully ignorant and just wide-eyed thinking it's all going to be this wonderful dream. You know, like some people have about working in the anime industry. right? And then they go, and then they pack up and move to Japan, or if they're a bodybuilder, they pack up and they move to California so they can work out on Muscle Beach, because they believe that myth that they've gotten from somewhere about just how cool it is. You know, it's like working at Marvel Comics in 1967, right? But the truth is, if you actually were there at Marvel Comics in 1967, it's important to realize that Stan and Jack they're just cranking out comic books. You know, they were just cranking out comic books. They did not know they were making history. They didn't know they were making history. But they loved what they were doing, so they just did it, and they just cranked it out every month. The Hulk didn't come from some sort of amazing epiphany on Stan's part. The Hulk came from, oh, geez, I got to fill up a comic book this month. What do we do? Well, let's just do like a Frankenstein's monster. We'll have it because of gamma rays, and let's paint him green. That's what it was. And it just happened to be the right combination of talents and the right time in history, the right audience. Everything just came together. The same thing happened to me with my movie, right? The same thing happened to me with my movie, which some of you guys are aware of, but the movie Healed by Grace, it's a movie that made $1 million. But that movie, it could not have happened. If I released that movie today, it would not make $1 million. It would probably make about, probably over its lifetime, it would make maybe a couple 100,000, maybe, right? But the reason it happened is because it was the right movie for the right audience at the right time, where there was a retail sector and buying habits in the marketplace that no longer exist today, right? And so so if somebody looked at, kind of following this example through to its logical conclusion, if somebody looked at my movie and said, oh, that's what I'll do if I want to make a lot of money, I'll make a chick flick horse movie. Well, they're going to get a rude awakening, because they don't realize that all the circumstances that allowed that to be successful don't exist anymore. That's where they're going to go through this phase right here. They're going to make that movie, and they're going to spend too much money making it, and then find out that the marketplace for that type of movie, it still exists, but it's not what it was 10 years ago. And then they're going to get discouraged and wonder if they made a mistake getting into the movie business. Okay? So you can guard against that to a degree by talking to people who know. In that case, in the distribution sector, who can tell you what's going on the street. So again, to finish this out, the fourth step is unconsciously competent, which is where you've achieved a level of craft that it's just second nature to you to do good quality work, And at that point, obviously, you're not going to be hurting for opportunities to do the thing that you like to do. Okay, so now I'm going to go back here again, and as I said, look at the comments, and then probably wrap it up. Actually, I don't know that I'm going to go extra long today. So I said that I clarified for Max that stage 4 is actually unconsciously competent. It's when you no longer have to think about it. Collaboration works with Maria's theater partner, very practical, down to earth. Okay, so you guys balance each other out. He's got strengths that you don't have, and vice versa. Okay, Amar says he's been trying to work this model, and what another company is pretty popular called Black Sands Entertainment. My optimal goal was to do comic to animation and games. I wanted to tie it all together, because in every game you have short films. Effectively, yeah, for sure. And the story can be done as a comic or graphic novel. So the question is, how did that attempt at a synergistic collaboration go? And if it went well, how's it going? And if it didn't go well, what went wrong? I would think for most people, look, if you approach somebody with a concept, it's like the way I sell jingles. Seriously, guys, I'll just kind of fill this in while I'm talking here, but when I sell a radio jingle, I literally do this. I say, okay, the person is already on the radio. They're already spending money, right? Because I heard their commercial on the radio. So there's no doubt that they're in the market, okay? So the whole sales pitch is this. It's literally this simple. Hey, listen, I'm a jingle guy, and I heard your spot on the radio, and I think I can help you out. Would you be if I've got a concept, and if I created what I kind of have in my head, and you liked it, would you buy it? And then they're always going to say the same thing. Every once in a while, they'll just say, nah, we're happy with our advertising. And usually they don't tell you that because they've thought it through. They tell you that because they're busy and they don't want to deal with you right now. I understand that. Sometimes you'll get somebody who'll treat you that way, and you call them 2 weeks later, and you'll have a wonderful conversation. They wind up being a customer, So there's timing involved. But basically, all you're doing is just saying, hey, I've got a concept. If I did it and you liked it, would you buy it? Normally, the next question is going to be, well, what's it going to cost me? So then you tell them whatever you tell them. In my case, it might be, $1,200 for a jingle package. Or it might be, if they're going to be worrying about the money, I might say, well, we could do it for $5.99, but that's a 1-year license. And if you really like it and it's working for you, then you renew the license next year. Something like that. So now I'm figuring out a way to solve their problem in a way that works for them, right? Well, you're going to run into the same thing when you approach. So it's the same exact thing. You're taking somebody with the Webtoon thing, you're taking somebody who's already successful in a synergistically parallel marketplace that's not your marketplace because you're an animator, right? And you're saying, okay, you know what? I kind of have a concept here, and it seems like maybe there could be some synergy. Are you interested in exploring it? And if they're like the jingle customer, their question, they may not ask it directly, especially right away. But their question is going to be, well, in what ways am I putting my intellectual property that I've built an audience for at risk by trusting you? That's a really important question, and you have to satisfactorily answer that question and put their fears to rest and have a plan for how you would do something like this that helps them be comfortable going forward with you. And if you can do that, friends, if you can present that plan, you've actually accomplished half the battle, because you've shown yourself to be a thoughtful professional who thinks about things from their point of view, who thinks about things as a service provider who cares about making this a win, not just for yourself, but for them too, right? So the very act of arriving at a plan, and then of course you'll negotiate back and forth how that should look. What's your timetable? What's your cash model? How do we start turning this into coin? What do we do when we release? What do we do when we have an episode that you look at it, and as the original creator, there's something about it you don't like that you want to change, whether it's a voice or whatever it is. You need to. It's your responsibility as an independent creator to make sure that you have the class and the knowledge and the intelligence to craft a plan. By the way, that process follows this cycle as well. You will suck at putting together a plan at first, but if you do it a lot, you'll get better at it. Trust me, you will. Because you're interacting with real human beings and things will go wrong. In the sales process, I'll give you an example here. This is really, if you guys are interested in working for yourselves, this is really good information you should know. But in sales, if you pitch somebody, well, let's keep working with the jingle example. Okay? If the person objects to your pitch, you say, okay, here's my concept. If I did it, you liked it, would you buy it? This is what it would cost. We've kind of come up with a middle ground where it seems like it'd be reasonable. And now they object in some way. So they're going to say, well, I need to talk to my partner or my wife or my husband. Or well, we'd like to maybe think about it, but it's not going to happen until next quarter because our marketing budget's all spent for this quarter, blah, 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 blah. So then I say to that person, I agree. Absolutely. I mean, if you have a deal buster and we can't do it, we can't do it. It's cool. It's good. I'm here to help you. Just for the record, though, if we could get around, let's just pretend for the sake of argument that we can get around the money problem, or for the sake of argument, let's assume that your partner were going to agree. Is there any other reason? Is there any other reason why you wouldn't move forward today? Guess what, friends? And I've tested this, and I read this in a book years ago, but I've tested it and it works. What it turns out is that the last thing they tell you, the final objection that they give you, is the real objection. That's the last one they give you is the one that you actually have to overcome in order to have any chance of moving forward. But if you've got the finesse to get through this process in a diplomatic way, where they actually enjoy interacting with you and don't sort of shut the conversation down, that's the kind of quality that makes you a good salesperson and engenders good, lasting relationships where you can actually be successful in any field, selling anything. You know, and a lot of times, of course, what we're really doing is we're selling ourselves. You know, we're selling our skill set. You know, that's what we're really selling. So now back to the comments here. So yeah, my comments to Amar were, okay, you're talking about how you've done this, and my question was, how's it going? And Amar, you're giving us all kinds of details about what you can do. You're saying with the time available, you can knock out a 16-episode series, blah, 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 blah. You're telling us what you can do. What I'm interested in is, okay, you're saying you've talked to people about it. Have you done it? How's it gone? Maybe you've said this in a later comment. I don't care about the theory of what you could do. That doesn't matter to me. Okay? That's part of your pitch to the person you're trying to do business with. But breaking that all down does show your intelligence. You've got the ability to break it down. Okay? But that's really all it does, is it shows us that you're thinking about this stuff. What we're going to be interested in is, well, how's it going when you do it, right? Another idea is to produce content. Art of Law says that already has an audience that's adapted to public domain. That's a good, effectively, Art of Law, that is the same starting point. The only advantage to the Webtoon idea, and the reason I throw it out there is, number one, it's a side door. It's a parallel industry where you're not actually competing with. See, when you try to get a job in the anime industry or something, you're effectively trying to appeal to people who either would have to spend money to hire you or who are actually competing with you. And why are they going to try to give you an opportunity? If there's an opportunity to be had, they might want it for themselves. So when you find somebody in a parallel industry, like a book author or a comic book artist, webtoon artist, whatever, you're bringing something inherently synergistic to the table, right? Okay, Maria says she sees a bunch of YouTube animations based on mythology. Some public domain content has a built-in audience. Well, I mean, it's not unlike my idea. You guys are aware that I wrote a fan script of Futurama, and I will guarantee you, at least I can't guarantee, but I'm pretty sure that if I actually started cranking out little 1-minute pieces of Futurama, that it would, if it looked pretty much like the real show, it probably would get some attention. Now, I don't have any kind of agreement with the guys who created that, so potentially it could cause me some problems, right? But anyway, the whole idea of leveraging what already works is just good business. That's what we have here. If we go back here, the reason the chick flick horse movie, remember, the chick flick horse movie, this movie that did very well, the whole reason it did well was because I sat down with the distributor and I asked him specifically, I said, just tell me what's selling in your marketplace. And basically he was like, well, I mean, geez, any movie that's got horses in it is going to probably do pretty good. Some kind of tragedy would probably be good. We want a tragedy, and then some sort of faith message that shows how somebody's faith helped them to overcome the tragedy. If there's a little romance, that probably isn't the worst thing in the world. So there was actually like 6 characteristics that were proven successful in his marketplace selling DVDs, because back then DVDs being sold through retail outlets were a thing. And so what I did was I wrote the script and I made sure I included every single one of the things he said. So effectively I was doing the same thing. I wasn't building on someone else's intellectual property. I was creating an original one. But I was building on the established habits of the marketplace. So I wasn't flying blind. And the movie turned out to be predictably successful. It was not a surprise when it was successful. Now the sequel, which was done, 8 years later, is doing fine, but it's not doing as well. So this movie has 1.5 million views just on YouTube alone. Forget all the other platforms it's on. But just on YouTube, it's got 1.5 million views, whereas the sequel has about 500,000 views. So, and by the way, the sequel, of course, features a Hollywood actress that's known, and as far as I can tell, having her in the movie didn't help at all. I don't know that it helped a bit. So that's just another thing. So anyway, let's go back here. A lot of illustrators get their start this day with social media. Well, okay, so I'm glad you mentioned social media because this takes us back in my initial thesis here. It takes us back to the middle approach, which is that I say I don't want to appeal to the industry for a job, and maybe I also don't want to try to partner with a successful creative in a parallel industry like Webtoons. So that says I'm back here. And now my whole job is to just build an audience using Patreon, YouTube, whatever the platform is, to just build a following. I think if you're good, if you do good work, you will build a following, and over time, whatever success means to you or looks like, it just depends. Depends on what you're really trying to accomplish. For me, I want to create original properties. I'm a writer, so I don't need to partner with a Webtoon creator, although there are absolutely circumstances where I might. I mean, truthfully, Amar, you're a good example because being a cartoonist, I don't know that you have Webtoons out there, and if you do, let me know. I mean, if you don't, I'm kind of for what I know about you, I'm kind of like wondering why not, and Amar's, that's a very, honest statement. I was never a fan of the industry. I was always a fan of doing your own thing. That's clear, from what we know about you. That's clear that you're like me in that respect. You'd rather do your own thing. But the Webtoon path for an animator is also a very strong path for your own creativity because you're talking about an order of magnitude less work to create a Webtoon compared to creating a cartoon, but yet everything you do to create the Webtoon can be leveraged into the creation of a cartoon. You don't lose anything by creating the Webtoon. So for that reason, does it make sense for me to take these individual frames, put dialogue bubbles on them, and release it as a Webtoon? Absolutely. I mean, believe me, guys, I'm thinking about it. Why would I not do that? You tell me. Why would I not do that? I could actually release enough episodes to have most of the entire first 40 minutes of Salt and Light out as a Webtoon, and that could be accomplished in a week. Okay? There's some really good reasons for me to look at releasing a Webtoon. I don't know anything about that marketplace. For all I know, I would wind up with 6 followers, in a year. I have no idea. I haven't spent any time looking into it. Okay. Even going to art school, you have to present a portfolio. I hate statements like that. You have to present a portfolio. Well, yeah, if you're... I hate statements like that because you're speaking from the vantage point of somebody who's basically saying, I understand how the industry works, but by the way, we're all victims of it. Because if you're gonna do it, you have to present a portfolio. Well, who says you have to present a portfolio? If I'm trying to get a job, then of course they're probably going to want to see a portfolio. But there's nothing that says I've never had a portfolio in my life. Okay? I've been able to succeed making films, selling radio jingles, doing web development. Now I'm working on a cartoon. You can go down the list. I have never had a portfolio. Now, if you want to talk about jingles, I do have a demo reel. Right? It's about a 3-minute long demo reel of jingles. So if you want to call that a portfolio, then I guess as a proof that you can kind of sort of do what you say you're doing, then of course it's important to be able to demonstrate that. I guess it's the terminology present a portfolio that I find a little tweaking for me. I remember having to do that in the 80s, and back then I knew nothing about a portfolio, but you had to go to the library and figure it out. Definitely. Absolutely. Better to have a mentor, someone you admire to learn and grow from. Okay, I've spent years thinking that this is what the stages are. My logic was that the master can teach you and he knows what he's doing. Yes, Max, it's important. It is important to, if you can have a mentor, I'm kind of serving that purpose today by just explaining this to people, I suppose, to a degree, right? And so hopefully, you guys find that helpful, right? I'm trying to get this to shrink, and it's not being responsive. But as we grab a hold of these concepts, and then put them into practice, hopefully it gets us somewhere. Even if they're especially successful and great at their craft, so help you to become more successful now because they know what it takes. Well, yes, absolutely. Amar, that is me talking to the film distributor. That's me having the conversation with my film distributor. I go to somebody who knows what the heck they're talking about, and I said, look, you tell me what you need. You tell me the product you need me to deliver to you in order for both of us to make some money. And he did. That was a very, very appealing proposition to that film distributor. He's like, oh my God, when is the last time a filmmaker came to me and asked me these questions? I'm not joking, guys. I'm not making this up. This film distributor, he's like, no one ever does that. And I found it baffling. He said, no, filmmakers never just come to me and ask me, what kind of product do we need? They never do that. I'm going, yeah, well, I guess they're a little bit silly. So, anyway, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to be back in a couple of minutes. And in the meantime, I guess we will let this little bit of animation loop, and I'll be back in a couple minutes. And I am back. Well, I think the sum up it's for me, one thing to be aware of too is that if you're trying to advance yourself, you are in sales, okay? And one thing you'll find, getting back to sort of the portfolio thing, is that if you present intelligently, like I'm using myself as an example, the way I approach this situation. Let's go back over here. The way I approached the movie thing, just the way I approached it, did not, of course, the film distributor initially the webtoon creator, they don't know anything about you, right? Most people are going to lead with their portfolio, okay? Think about this for a moment. And it really overlooks the human element. If you lead with your portfolio, it's rather important that you already know in advance that the person cares about your portfolio. We tend to lead with our portfolio because we're insecure and we think our portfolio is going to win the day. But we know that there are 3 reasons, and I've shared this before, but it's important. There are 3 reasons why people can become successful. I'm going to state it again because I think it's a really important principle. Okay? One reason is elite talent. If you have elite talent and you lead with your portfolio, that can in fact win the day. If you're of modest talent, you can become successful by being a modest talent who's just a hard worker. You're industrious. People, they know you can deliver the goods. You might not be the best in the world, but they can rely on you. Okay? Well, there's a third reason people become successful. And let's just call it get along. You're just a fun or easy person to get along with. You get along with a wide variety of people, and people just like you. These are all 3 reasons, and I think it's important to remember this. If you have any one of these, you're going to be okay in life. In whatever you pursue, you're going to be okay. You can have any one of the 3 and you'll get along just fine. If you have 2 of them, you're going to be very successful. You're going to do great. If you have all 3, you're going to be one of those really rare world-class people who is at the top of their field. But I also think it's important to note that this is vanishingly rare. Vanishingly rare. Very few people have all 3. Okay, so don't get hung up on trying to have all 3. But if you lead with your portfolio, it's because you are banking on the elite talent thing. What I'm saying is, in human relations, let's face it, think about your dealings with your insurance company. Think about your dealings with your web services provider, your GoDaddies or your network solutions that I talked about last week. We know that the fact of the matter is that in the marketplace, there's one thing that prevails for the most part, is mediocrity. Most products are just okay. Most TV shows are just okay. Most songs are just okay. Most cartoons are just okay. There's very, very few that actually change the world. And when they come along very, very rarely. So you're kind of stupid to be shooting for that. Don't shoot for that. Shoot for a logical assessment of where you fit in this continuum and then capitalize on it. The easiest one to capitalize on, obviously, is this one, because anybody can discipline themselves to be friendly or to show leadership or grace when you're dealing with ticklish situations, right? So what my little story here points up is that if you lead with your humanity, if you lead by just being not only a nice person on the one hand, but also somebody who's thought this through and has a proposed plan, it's not a rigid plan. You're not trying to present as somebody who has all the answers. That's a mistake. That's why I kind of I pick on you a little bit, Amar, when you weigh in with all these comments about, yeah, you can do this, you can do that, you can do this, and you're showing everybody what you think you know about it. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. You may, in fact, know those things. Okay? But the truth of the matter is nobody cares what you know. What you know doesn't actually fit in here very well, hardly anywhere. What people want to know is, can they get along with you? Are you industrious? Or are you an elite talent? What you think you know simply informs your ability to be a hard worker or be an elite talent, right? But these are the things that actually make you successful. So crassly, putting it crassly, nobody cares what you know. When I went to this guy, I didn't present to him and said, oh, hey, man, hey, Dave. His name's Dave, too, by the way. I said, hey, yeah, I know what we can do. If we do this, we're going to be successful. And I'm a guy that's never had any success making films. In fact, I've made 3 films that aren't very good. At the very least, they're not successful. What the hell am I going to gain by going to this guy who's working in the industry every day and trying to present as somebody who knows what he's doing? That's stupid. Don't do that. That just turns people off. No. I went to this guy and said, look, I'm just trying to make moves. I'm just trying to do a good job. You tell me. Help me understand what I need to do to help make you successful. That's what you're doing in the webtoon scenario. You're going to the cartoon guy and you're saying, look, you got a toon that's successful. I'm not going to deny that I would love to have access to your audience, but it's partly because I like what you're doing and it turns me on, and it's also because I want to advance my career too. So let's have no illusions about that. But my question is, if I were to develop this in a certain direction, is that something you're interested in? Can I help you to make your property more successful? That's just good sense, man. That's just good business, right? That's how you open doors. Not by trying to present as somebody who already knows what to do. I can't emphasize that enough. Because when you present as somebody who already knows everything about what to do, what you're showing is that you're not this person, actually. Do you get that? Do you see that? You're actually showing, okay, so you can turn around and throw that back at me and say, well, Dave, you're talking like you know all this stuff. Well, all I'm saying is I've done it. I've done it. I've been able to pay all my bills for a generation by applying these principles. Salt and Light may wind up being very, very unsuccessful, friends. It very well could. And that's on me. That's my fault. It's very much my fault because in the case of Salt and Light, I'm actually not making the most informed choice. In fact, let me explain what I mean by that. When I went and talked to my distributor about Salt and Light, what they wanted to do was they wanted to target kids that were like 3 to 8 years old, and they wanted a talking animal. Okay? So understand this, friends. If you want to create something particularly for the family-friendly entertainment marketplace, go create this right now. Stop what you're doing and go create this. Create something that's aimed at 3 to 8-year-olds with a talking animal. And I will help you. I will help you get distribution and turn your show successful. I will be happy to do that for you. Not a problem. I would just to be nice, I would do that for you. I would open the door for you. Because this is what my distributor told me he thought would be the thing that would work. I made a command decision for myself, for my own reasons, that I said, no, that's not what I want to do. I enjoyed Avatar: The Last Airbender. I could be wrong, but I believe there's a place in the market for 8 to 15-year-old, and even though there's an animal that's funny, he doesn't talk. He's just an animal. Okay? So these are my personal creative decisions that may bite me in the hiney. I may greatly regret from the standpoint of success making these choices, but in this case I made those choices. Those were my choices, but it's not what the distributor recommended. When I ran this back at the distributor said, you know what, I think that could work. I think that could be good. So let's try that. Go ahead, rock and roll, do what you want to do, and we'll see what happens. And he gave me some estimates as what he thought this property could earn on an annual basis. And I said, okay, if the numbers you're projecting are anywhere close to right, then it's worth doing. It's worth giving it a try, right? But if you guys want to immediately have an inroad into the faith and family, or let's just say family friendly, because the whole industry is moving away from overtly like Christian content and stuff like that, and definitely I am too. It's not what I want to do. But, positive themed, uplifting sort of content, I'm fine with that. That's good. I wouldn't mind creating something dark either. You know what I mean? I don't have a bias against that. It's just not kind of what I'm doing right now. But if you guys want to have an opportunity, go create this. Go create a cartoon right now that's aimed at 3 to 8-year-olds with a talking animal. Do your own research on the industry to see other properties that kind of fit that profile, and do that. You do that, I will happily get you in touch with people that can help you get your product into the marketplace. It's really not that big of a deal. And what does that mean to you in terms of revenue? If you can create a 30-minute show that fits this profile, and it's good, it's reasonably well done, then you have the ability to turn that over to a distributor who's going to basically split with you 50-50. They're going to be out there getting it on the platforms and sort of promoting it. You're going to be creating it, and you're going to split the money. And that's what will happen. I won't tell you what the money would be because it's a wide range, but it could be anywhere from a few $100 to a few $1,000s a month, probably. That would be my estimate based on what I know. Okay, so especially if they're really successful and great at their craft, they'll help you to become successful more than not because they know what it takes. You will not be around them or friend or be mentored by them if you plan to just be mediocre. See that I'm not quite sure how to answer that one. I basically think you're wrong because, again, okay, well, it depends on what you mean by mediocre, okay? So, in other words, if I go to Warner Brothers, whatever their current platform is, and I look at all the cartoons that they're doing these days, or I go to Peacock, or I go to Netflix, and I just look at the cartoons that are out there, okay? Look at Amazon's been, Vox Machina, has been really being pushed by Amazon Prime. Is this right? I think I got this spelled right. Okay, Vox Machina is what they call it. It's basically an anime type production, an Americanized anime type production with all kinds of F-bombs and people saying offensive, vulgar language. So that's what's funny about it. That's what makes it so entertaining, is the fact that it's placed in, the ancient world. You sort of got this ancient pub and everybody's carrying swords, but yet they go around throwing F-bombs and stuff. That's like the entertainment value proposition of this show. As far as I'm concerned, the animation's pretty good, the character designs are pretty good, but basically this show could not possibly suck more. This is like I wouldn't waste 5 seconds on this show. It's crap. That's my opinion. It may be getting lots of views for Amazon Prime. So what do we mean by mediocre? For me, this is hopelessly mediocre. It's not even close. It's not even on a scale of 1 to 10. It's a 2 at best. Because they took a good animation production and did the most obvious gratuitous thing possible in order to try to build an audience, which is let's be vulgar and think that's going to carry the day. That's really what they're doing. And to me, this is really mediocre. Now you look at, I can't remember what platform it was on. It might have been Amazon Prime or it might have been Netflix or something, but Woody Harrelson's involved with this cartoon, and I think Tommy Chong. So, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically about 3 hippies from the 60s who dropped acid, and they all fell asleep, and they woke up 30 years later in the modern world, in the basement of their house. And the house had been, in the meantime, bought by other people, and now they have to adapt to living in the world. It's a Rip Van Winkle thing where they're 30 years later. Okay, so you got Woody Harrelson, you've got, I think it was Tommy Chong, and I believe the third guy would be, oh my gosh, John Goodman. I believe John Goodman is the other guy that does the voices. So you got these guys, and I know Woody. I'm not sure about the others, but I think that Woody's listed as executive producer. So basically, what that means is that Woody put up the money to get this thing produced. Okay, this is another example of what I'm talking about. I watched the pilot for this show about the hippies that wake up 30 years later. It's a Rip Van Winkle concept. And the entire episode made me chuckle a little bit precisely one time in the whole half an hour. Is that a good show? Well, I mean, it might be successful. We'll see. Okay, but for me, that's also mediocre. So these are shows that potentially are quite successful, but I do consider them to be mediocre. I do not believe they have lasting appeal. I believe they will be completely forgotten just a very few years from now. But in the meantime, they might make pretty good money. You know, they might get some people watching because of the involvement of Woody and Tommy and John. This is going to get people watching because Amazon is relentlessly promoting it. Relentlessly. Okay? So you guys see what I'm saying? So mediocrity is in the eye of the beholder, but the industry certainly seems to think that mediocrity you can accomplish a lot and be okay, reasonably successful, and not really be all that good at what you're doing. And I do believe that's the case in both of these examples. I can't remember what this show is called, unfortunately. If one of you guys knows, please pop it into the comments. Yeah, well, right, that's right. So I'm kind of halfway, 2/3 through the comments here. Amar's saying that the comics code authority came into being with the publication of the in the 50s. There was a book published, I believe it was. It might have been an article. I don't remember what it was, but it basically, I think it was called The Seduction of the Innocent. So in the 1950s, what Amar's talking about is there was a fairly thriving comic book industry, and in the 1950s, there was, I can't remember the author's name, but there was a book or something called Seduction of the Innocent. And the book, or whatever it was, impugned the comic book industry as being the reason for what we called back in the 1950s, of course I wasn't there, but juvenile delinquency. So juvenile delinquency was caused by comic books. Okay, so the comic book industry did the same thing that the faith and family DVD industry did about 5 years ago. It dried up and disappeared overnight. That's actually what happened to the comic book industry. It's what happened to the faith and family movie industry actually about 5 years ago when the whole retail situation changed. So what rebooted comic books was they formed the Comics Code Authority, and if you had this little icon on the cover of your comic book, that meant that it was compliant with a bunch of rules that were essentially censorship rules that, and if the comic book followed those conventions, it was considered suitable entertainment. And by capitalizing on coming up with properties that met the letter of the Comics Code Authority but still had a lot of adventure and fun and, you know, blah, 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 what came out of that? Fantastic Four, the Hulk, Spider-Man. So all of the mythologies that we now embrace as being absolutely, you know, define our pop culture because these properties have made their way now into film. Right? So these properties that were created in the neighborhood of 1962 to 1968, they all were created. It goes back to my 2 to 8 year thing about the Beatles. Everything that happened with Marvel Comics that now defines our pop culture all happened in about a 5-year period of time. It's crazy. And it only happened because Stan and Jack needed to make some money. So they just were cranking this stuff out. We got to do something. Okay. So Stan says, well, okay, you know, gamma rays or cosmic rays or whatever, and we'll just invent superheroes. And they never kill anybody like Batman used to do in the comics, you know, and things like that. And Stan and Jack charted a new path. I do not believe that when they were in the middle of it, other than looking at the monthly sales of the magazines, I don't think they knew they were charting a new path. I don't believe that they knew that they were creating legendary pop culture. They didn't know that. They were just trying to make a living. But it grabbed, and this is what happens. It's the same thing happened with my chick flick horse movie. It was the right thing at the right time, and it just grabbed. And then Stan, of course, always had the presence of mind to, when something grabbed, he would capitalize on it and say, okay, well, let's do more of that. That's just good sense, right? Okay, so what do we got here? I would recheck those shaking plates. They divert attention from the main character. Try not to divide attention. Yeah, I've thought about that, Max. I'm probably going to leave them, but you're right. You make a good point about not dividing attention. Another key skill, once anatomy and your essential drawing skills are solid, the next thing you have is the ability, more than to have a style. You need the ability to be able to mimic styles. Okay, well, Amar, once again, you're weighing in, telling us all that this is what we need to be able to do. What I'm telling you you need to be able to do is you need to be able to freaking deal with people. Okay? That's what I'm telling you you need to be able to do. Because some people did Matt Groening make it and did his comic book work evolve into The Simpsons because he was able to mimic styles? No. Matt Groening goes like this. He draws two eyes that are circles, and then he might have a nose, and this is what Matt does. So he had a style, but he wasn't mimicking styles. He just did what he did, and then somebody in the television space, for whatever reason, I don't know exactly what happened, but for some reason somebody in the television space said, you know what, that would be pretty entertaining if we turned that into a little short cartoon to show on the Tracy Ullman show. And then that, of course, evolved into what became The Simpsons. So otherwise, you won't be able to proficiently be able to do your work on other people's IPs. So I assume then that you can consider yourself. Yeah, the last one works when you're fighting with somebody. The last thing that she tells you is the real reason. Yeah. That can be true. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that what I can do if I had the time. No. You've got the time. If you are that clear-headed about what's important for you to do, then don't do anything else except that thing that's the most important thing. Then you'll have the time. With available time, I am still working this process out because doing everything by yourself is a tall task while working full-time. I agree. It's tough. I'm almost done with 8 issues. That's good. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Hey, Quadiman. I agree with you about the power of collaboration. Sometimes 1 + 1 = 3. Yeah, the thing is, Art of Law, oftentimes it doesn't. Be prepared for it not to work. Okay? The reality is that collaboration is a mixed bag. Sometimes it works, and more often, it's just like relationships. How often do people get married and they actually not only stay together for 30 years, but they're actually happy for 30 years? It can happen. It does happen. But actually, most relationships, they run into glitches. The individuals involved aren't necessarily mature enough or care enough to, fix the problem, and you wind up going separate ways, and then it's on to the next relationship. A lot of things can go wrong, and that's okay. It doesn't matter if they go wrong. Expect that, right? I had a 5-year page. I'm into the third or 4th year of it. Still have to illustrate 60 pages. Huh, okay. Well, I don't understand completely what it is you're saying you're doing. It looks like a comic thing. But, my question is, why not just get them out there? Get them out there and let the marketplace tell you if what you're doing is great or it sucks. Don't try to keep it all in your head and when I'm ready, when it's all finished and it's all perfect and it's all wonderful, then I'll release it. That's insane. What if you do that and you wait 20 years and you finally release a thing and find out it sucks or that the marketplace doesn't care? Find out early. Right, okay, cool. Shared the one I did with you, but I haven't been that productive over the past couple of years because of me splitting up my focus. Yep, that is a real danger. Nice chat. See you guys. Max is gone. Inclusivity, later, blah, blah, blah. Low brow content. Yes, Tom's probably referring to the Woody Harrelson thing. Oh, well, and the Amazon Prime thing. They're both very lowbrow content. Saw it already, and what I meant by the mentor comment. Successful people typically don't hang around unless their intent is to remain mediocre or be the best for themselves. Mediocre was not referring to content as far as animation. It was because streaming platforms are playing the content game. Correct, but that's good news in a sense. Okay, so Vox Machina, Tom's pointing out, and I'm glad you did, Tom. Thank you for doing that. Tom's pointing out that what I said at the beginning of this whole diatribe about webtoons is actually the driver on Vox Machina, to some degree. In other words, if it wasn't for the tie-in with Dungeons and Dragons, the show never probably would have happened. Because the way that the creators were able to put together the coalition and the funding and everything to be able to create it was to build on something in a parallel marketplace, Dungeons and Dragons gaming, that was already successful. And what you see happening with Vox Machina is exactly what usually happens most of the time. You wind up with something that's kind of cool and novel and exciting because it is a tie-in to something people are familiar with, but basically it sucks. That's normal. Does that mean it doesn't wind up making money? Well, I'll bet you the animation team's getting paid up front. Yeah, Frederick Wortham, that's right, who wrote Seduction of the Innocent. Yes, thank you. The Freak Brothers. Yes, thank you, Tom. Thank you for helping me stay on target here today. So yeah, the Freak Brothers. Thank you. Tom's helping me stay on track here. So this show is Freak Brothers. I tell you, I'm not joking. I'll boldly say this and absolutely mean it. Is I could write an episode of Freak Brothers that would be 5 times as funny as what I saw when I watched it, and I could do it blindfolded with my hands tied behind my back. I mean, I guarantee you I could write a much better episode than what those guys came up with. It's amazing to me how they could suck so bad, but they did. It just is. Now, other people may look at it and go, oh, it's the funniest thing in the world. You know, I don't know. But for me, I was waiting. I waited through the whole episode. Please, make me laugh. You know, I'll hang in here with you through one episode. Make me laugh. It happened one time, and it was just a chuckle. It wasn't a hard laugh. So, oh, Pete David. Okay, thank you. Okay, so it wasn't Tommy Chung. All right, great. Yeah, and Underground Comics, you're talking about the it has a style kind of similar to Matt Groening's, because obviously Matt was doing Underground Comics. He wasn't mainstream, you know, before he got into animation. But the guys that did the I don't know who did it, but back in the 70s you had this kind of stuff that was like, it'd be like this kind of thing, right? Guys, toking on their weed and wearing their sandals, and you'd have these kinds of styles in Underground Comics, and sometimes they were, there's nudity and things like that, and it's entertaining stuff. I mean, it had the potential to be amazing, actually. This had the potential. Freak Brothers, for me, could be an amazingly funny and fun show. But I just feel like they missed in a big way. That's just my opinion, and other people, yeah, Grateful Dead type for sure. Keep on trucking. Thank you, Tom. Exactly. That's what I was thinking about. I was thinking in my mind, I'm seeing the sandal here out like this, and then the other foot way back like this, right, or something. The whole keep on trucking thing. I'm not going to take the time to draw it right now, but yes. Man, takes you back, doesn't it? They have to do 10 of those to be able to do the type of content I want to do. They have to do 10 of what? And my work is on various streaming platforms that would open a lot of doors. Once people know my company and my work is on various streaming platforms, that would open a lot of doors. Yeah, Robert Crumb. Thank you. Yep. Crumb Comics, exactly. So, interesting stuff. And my question for you, Amar, of course, is if the concept's that compelling and you've got that much time into it, then where can I watch it? I mean, tell us all here so we can check it out. Because, like I said, if it's not where it needs to be for whatever reason, either from a market positioning standpoint, or from a drawing standpoint, or from a story standpoint, or a comedy, then okay, to be honest, if I was to produce a show like Vox Machina and it was on Amazon Prime, then that would be an accomplishment. Absolutely, that is true. There's no question. Then I have to do 10 of those to be able to do the type of content I want. Okay, I got you. So in a sense, that's kind of what I'm doing with Salt and Light is, I'm putting out these webisodes, and then what I'm doing for my path is, okay, quite literally, this is what I am currently actually doing. Is, we've got 3 webisodes, right, that are out for this thing. Okay. As I've said before, the viewership on those webisodes is not that high, and I'm not going through the social path to build audience for it per se. That's not what I'm doing. So I'm not out talking about it on all kinds of different platforms. Nothing wrong with that, and I probably should be doing that if I want to just get views, and it's all good. That's really not what I'm doing, though. Because remember, for me, I already am very confident that when I have a 24-minute episode, that distribution is going to happen, and it'll probably be, it's not going to be super lucrative or anything, but it's probably going to do okay. It's probably going to be all right. Okay? So for that reason, my thinking was, it's more fun for me because I like connecting with individual people than, I don't like doing the social media thing that much, really. I find it kind of boring, and I don't know, I just, it's not my thing, So I basically feel like, number one, I suck at it, and number two, it's not any fun. So why am I going to go be posting on social media constantly? I just do my YouTube live streaming, and pretty much that's it. But what I am doing is I'm saying, okay, this is completely from my own perspective in my own head. What I'm saying to myself is, look, I've successfully proven I can create these webisodes. I've demonstrated that I can create the soundtrack, the voices, the animation, and the story. People have to hang in there with me on the story to assume and believe that if they keep watching the webisodes, that the story is going to emerge and it's going to be a fun or compelling story. Okay. Having established in my own mind that I'm satisfied with the path I'm on and that I am going to successfully get to this very soon, actually, and that I'm also confident that the distribution path is already pretty much a foregone conclusion, so I don't have to worry about that. So it's my absolute full expectation that the cartoon will get global distribution. It's not even something that's a doubt in my mind. So given that that's true, what I am doing is I'm saying, well, let's do like I did, where I talked about Ed Hooks. The reason I got in touch with Ed Hooks, who wrote the book Acting for Animators, is that I don't even remember what I searched. Oops, I'm spelling wrong here, folks. I did some Google search, and somehow it led me to his book. I really have no idea what I searched on. But I thought, well, okay, there's a guy, he wrote a book, so that's kind of a parallel marketplace too. Book sales are important, right? And this is tying in with the animation industry. And so I just reached out to him personally. I said, hey, I'm doing this. If you look on YouTube, you can see this is kind of what I'm doing, and maybe you'll find it interesting. And it wound up with a dozen emails back and forth, just conversing, really just kind of talking about, our feelings and ideas about acting as it informs animation practice, right? And so for me, that's more fun. I'm enjoying, getting to know people that are doing things that are pretty cool in marketplaces that are sort of parallel to the one I'm operating in, right? And so, to me, that's my path, and it's not the right path for everybody. But I expect I'll do more of that. I may reach out to, Laval Lee, who's, he's the, I think I'm spelling his name right, but he's the VP of Don Bluth Studios, and he and I are friends on Facebook, and I'm subscribed to a 2D animation channel or group channel, whatever you want to call it, on Facebook that he kind of runs, and he's got a parallel Discord to it. But I may be a little more proactive reaching out to him, at some point about what I'm doing, just to kind of get the word out and maybe in his space or whatever. But that's what I'm doing. It's different for everybody. You got to find your own path. So now you're thinking about Charles Addams. Yes. Yeah, I believe the Addams family came first, and the Munsters was a knockoff on a different network of the Addams family. Because of the success of the Addams family, the Munsters happened. if I had a pick, I'd take the Munsters, as I personally find to be the better show. But that's, people probably have different opinions about that. Adams was drawing his little one-panel scenes in New Yorker several years before he was approached. Give them names, right? Have you ever mapped yourself on the various skills category to know where you're at on the learning path for each? I assume not. Yeah, actually, that's a great question, Tom. Let's chase that for a moment. One of the points that I made, actually in my conversations with Ed Hooks, was the real challenge is that if you want to do what I'm doing, you have to be a writer. Okay, you've got to be able to draw. You got to be able to animate. So I'll make a distinction between animation and drawing as two different things. You really need to be able to paint too, because you're going to be painting digital backgrounds. You got to be able to do voice acting. Okay. You've got to be able to do video editing, post-production. That would be special effects and all that. And very, very strangely in my case, because this is a really rare combination, but you've also got to be able to compose, create the musical score. Okay, so you got all these things you have to be able to do what I'm trying to do. Okay, and this actually did come up specifically in my email, my conversations back and forth with Ed Hooks, is that it's really tough because you can't be elite level in all of these. But I think it's important to make a distinction right out of the gate here between being elite level. When I talked about the three things that can make you successful, you can have elite level talent, you can be a really industrious worker, or you can be a really easy person that people just like to work with, that's easy to get along with, okay? You're not going to be this in a bunch of different areas. Okay, so it's important to make a distinction between these three things that can make you successful versus the 4-step progression from being a novice to being a craftsman. Okay, if you had elite level talent, you're going to jump to the 4th level in that particular area probably pretty quickly, like unusually quickly, just because you're gifted. That can happen. The example I've given in the past is Steve Perry. It took him a long time. He was actually fairly old before he teamed up with Journey in the late 1970s. But let's face it, once he found the right band with the right music at the right time, his voice was just the right voice at that time, and boom, instantly, people talk about this guy had the voice of God or something. It's crazy. Okay, so what I'm saying is, number one, this is important. If I'm going to analyze myself, elite level talent, I do not have in any area at all. Okay? Not any of these areas do I have elite level talent. Not at all, not even close. The only area that's sort of, the areas where I probably do have elite level talent would be sales, actually. I'm very good at dealing with people in a sales environment, and probably actually songwriting. And if you don't believe me on this one, go watch the movie that I cited. Go watch Healed by Grace. Because there's about a half a dozen songs in that movie that they're very good songs, very hooky, and I wrote all of the songs in the movie. Basically, I wrote the songs and my daughter Natalie sang them, and I played all the instruments and produced all the music and did everything associated with it except singing them, other than some background vocals, because it was kind of her movie. I wrote the movie for her as an acting vehicle for her. So if you want to talk about this, these are the areas where I probably qualify as that, and if you notice, none of these areas are this. So for me, Tom brings up a really good point, because I have to progress through these steps in every single one of these areas just to be able to do what I'm trying to do. So where am I at in those areas? Well, let me think about it. As a writer, I would say stage 3. I am consciously competent. I have weaknesses, but I'm basically between 3 and 4. So if you put a gun to my head and say, Dave, you got to deliver a screenplay in 1 month and it needs to be good, I'm going to be able to deliver that. Okay? As an artist drawing, I'm between 2 and 3. And by the way, if you analyze yourself, you're probably going to find out that you're like this, where you're dancing between two of the levels. So I am consciously incompetent, continually moving towards consciously competent. One of the challenges with drawing for me is that I can see that, like a lot of things that you try to do and improve at, what happens is you plateau for a while, and then you make a quick, well, I shouldn't have drawn it that way. You make a relatively quick jump like that, and then you plateau again. So as a cartoonist, this is the frustrating part about it for me, because it seems like I can practice a lot, and my drawing actually doesn't really improve that much. But it does improve. And Valerie insists that I'm definitely better now than I was 3 years ago. So there's that. Animate, I'm a 2. I'm consciously incompetent. I'm a very mediocre animator. I have an advantage some people don't have, is that if I animate straight ahead, I have a very good instinct for just bringing the character to life in a way that sort of pops and feels good. I do have a talent for that. But in terms of the overall craft of animation and, sort of the 12 principles and all that kind of stuff, I suck. I suck. So, and I feel like I could be awesome at it, but I don't know that I care about being awesome at animation. I just care about telling stories. Okay, thank you, Maria. That's nice. Painting, same thing. I'm just a 2 to 3. I'm just a guy who's getting better, but I'm just okay. Voice acting, I'm probably 4. I'm unconsciously competent. If you tell me to make a voice right now and just do it, well, I think I'm going to be able to do it. Okay, so that I don't have to think too hard about voice acting. So I would say I probably have elite level talent actually in voice acting. World class, not sure, but maybe. Actually, maybe. I know I'm very, very good. Editing, 3 to 4. If you give me a bunch of raw video and you tell me to, and in fact I did that when I cut movie trailers. When you cut a movie trailer, you've got to basically take this movie and you're looking at how can I find the moments, and not necessarily in the order they appear in the movie either. You're just looking for moments that you can craft into a 1-minute little mini movie that really sells the movie. And the example I've given here that's one of the best examples is the sequel, Where the Red Fern Grows, 2. This is one of the worst movies ever made. It's so bad, you can't even describe it. Wilford Brimley's in it. And when I cut the trailer for that movie, I really had to search, how can we craft this into a trailer that does the best job I can do for my distributor to turn this into a compelling trailer, even though I'm looking at the movie and I'm going, this movie sucks. And I did it. It was challenging, but I did it. So I would say as an editor, I'm pretty close to this level. Post-production, I'm just okay. Sound effects, all that kind of stuff. I'm a 2. I'm just consciously incompetent. I'm okay. Music and composition, I'm sort of floating between 2 and 3. Every once in a while, I'll have magical moments that make you think maybe I'm a 4, but basically, I'm struggling. So as you can see, I think that's probably pretty accurate. So I'm just okay in almost all these areas. And if you were to go out and assemble a team, like you say, well, I can animate, but I can't do editing or I can't do composing, right? So then you go out and assemble a team. I will tell you, I almost guarantee you, you're going to wind up with a team that looks something like this. You're not going to go find elite people that are at a level 4 in all of these areas. You can't afford it. If you could, you'd be spending, you'd be into millions of dollars trying to produce the darn thing, right? And that's what I mean about mediocrity. And I appreciate that, Amar. My background painting, my digital background painting is typically hurried. It's hurried. I could go through the whole show and repaint every single background, and the show would not suffer for it. I will absolutely give you that. And this is one of the things, by the way, guys, that I really try to do. I try to be very wide-eyed about my own weaknesses. I know that I suck in a lot of these areas, and I don't want to, and I want to be able to state it clinically. It's just a fact. It isn't a big judgment, and it's not a problem, because we're always trying to get better in each of these areas. But I think this is probably a pretty fair assessment. You know, in most areas that it takes to create a show, I'm a 2 bordering on 3. Yet, what do we have? Ta-da! Okay, so there's lots of things you criticize about this show, and all your criticisms would be completely fair. However, I am creating a show. You know? So, you know, and to most people that I'd ever be talking about, I could finish the sentence and say, I'm creating a show and you're not. Right? So, and it's a fun challenge. You know, it is a fun challenge. It's not fun to recognize that you suck. Every time I go to score an episode, it is hard for me. It's never easy. But inch by inch, different little methodologies are opening up the door to where it's becoming easier, you know. So it's okay if it's, you know, if I'm not where I want to be in the long run. Would you say the level of competency is related to personal interest, amount of practice, or what? Well, I have a lot of faith, Tom, in the ability of any human being to progress through each of these stages if they're willing to make the effort. So if I'm going to say I'm not at elite level in any of these areas, generally I'd have to blame it on just not trying hard enough, you know, or paying a high enough price. I would also say, though, that it's almost never important to be at level 4. It's almost never important to be unconsciously competent, and it's not important to be elite level skill. If you basically got the bones of the craft down, and you can do it like a mediocre job, but you've got enough insight that you can go back and look at what you did and say, well, okay, we'll call that a draft, and now let's redo it or fix it up. Then you can be at the 2 to 3 level and still be doing great work. You know, overall great work. In some areas it's not great. You know, the animation in Salt and Light is not great. It's okay. Right? And now Amar's making a point that's kind of a balance to this, which is that one of the good things about, I think of it as being a reporter. I think that for creatives, the reporter mentality is a good mentality, and Maria's talked about it a little bit with the script she writes every week. There is a really strong value to doing what Amar's saying. Just crank it out, and then you release it, because once you release it, you can't take it back. Now, that's not completely true, because I could pull the episodes of Salt and Light down off YouTube, re-edit them, fix them up, blah, 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 and just reload them, repost them. I can do that, right? So am I blessed or am I cursed in that I am interested in trying to get better at each of these things? I don't know. I've had to do a lot of soul searching about that, and I've had to ask myself, what is it that's really important to me? And what's important to me is this: storytelling. I want whatever I create to be sufficiently entertaining. It can have certain weaknesses here and there, but basically I want it to be sufficiently entertaining that it sucks the person into the story where they forget, you know, they kind of like forget being critical about it, and they're just kind of lost in the characters or the comedy or whatever it is. That's my goal. And it really is my only goal. If I can, because it's not realistic to have any other goal for me. So if the overall final experience of the show for a viewer is entertaining, you know, most of the time, then I have achieved my goal. Then I've done what I set out to do. And I don't need to I don't need to be viewed as a great animator. Of course, neither is Matt Groening, or Seth MacFarlane. They're not looked at as great animators. at this point, there was a time when I would have wanted to be looked at, I think, as a great composer. And I don't think about being a great writer because I'm already pretty sure I am a pretty great writer, actually. It sounds arrogant, but I mean, I'm just trying to make that clinical assessment of myself. I think I pretty well got that one down. So there was a time when I cared about being maybe a great composer, but I don't think I do anymore. I think I just want to be a competent composer. I really just want to do a satisfactory job so that people don't think about the score when they're watching a show. It just supports the show. And whatever that requires, that's what I want to do. So none of these other areas do I actually care about. And maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you can't get to level 4 unless you make it your vocation. When you're at level 3, you realize, hey, I can do this. I can make a go of it. Maybe I'm a voice actor. Well, then you start doing more and more voice acting, and then what happens is you naturally, without really trying, you naturally flow into unconscious competence, right? By just doing a lot of it. So clearly the area of struggle is here. It's when you're consciously incompetent because you lose hope. You don't know if you're going to be able to get to where you want to be, but yet you know enough to have a vision of what that could look like down here. And so that can be a pretty discouraging place to be. And as I said earlier, in the path of a business, in the path of craft, this is the stage where most people quit. This is actually the reason precisely why people poke at software. Okay? Everybody enters into the animation fray unconsciously incompetent, and they're just cool to see stuff move, And then what you do is you realize that you're consciously incompetent, and then what you do is you start looking for tools to make it easier for you to convince both yourself and others that you're better than you actually are. Now that doesn't mean that the tools aren't useful to help you in fact be better than you actually are. Because they can help. But then what happens is people poke at the software tool, and actually what happens is in their knowledge of OpenTunes or their knowledge of Krita or their knowledge of Blender, they go through these same 4 stages. So what happens is, I believe, I could be wrong folks, but I think this is what happens. You enter the world of animation, you reach the point of consciously incompetent, and then you go start using Krita, and you go through the same thing. And with Krita, you get to the point where you're also consciously incompetent. And so then you jump over to Blender, and then you get to stage 2, and then you quit, and then you jump to OpenTunes, and then you quit, and then there's a new version of Krita out, so then you go back and start the whole process over again. And what happens is you never actually get that much better as an animator. Is that ringing true for anyone where you're feeling that? Oh God, I've done that. You're saying that to yourself? Oh crap, that's me. This is why I tell people as best I can. I say if there's any doubt, just go use Tahoma, because it's kind of the Swiss Army knife that's pretty stable, and so at least then you'll get past level 2. And with software, you have to go through the same thing. You have to get to the point where you know the quirks of the tool. You understand how to work around problems. And I mean, I'm telling you guys, I think most people never ever even get to stage 3 working with a tool. And then they come on platforms like this, and they hop on, and they talk about how they know everything there is to know about what you can do with this tool, but their work doesn't show that they've ever actually done it. That's the person who talks about, yeah, with the new version of Blender, you can do this and that and the other with geometry nodes, and you can, and you can, and you can, and you can, and you can. To which I, like a complete dick, frankly, say, okay, show me. Do it. Show me what you've done with it. And the answer is usually nothing at all, actually. And hence, this brings the conversation home. Because it gets to the reason why I want to have an interview with Ed Hooks. Is because in talking to Ed, we bring the focus squarely to acting. The focus is not on animation per se. It's on how acting, your knowledge of the craft of acting informs your approach to animation and informs your approach to the industry. And I think, again, considering that the foreword to Ed's book was written by Brad Bird, I think that it's safe to say that Brad would agree that if you want to be the best animator you can, or tell the best stories that you can, this is pretty much a good place to start. If you focus on this, what you're going to tend to do is you're going to tend to imitate, especially if you're in the CGI space, you're going to tend to imitate the acting idioms that have appeared again and again and again in movies in the CGI space that are essentially imitating what worked well in the early Pixar movies. And so these same little gestures and expressions that convey certain emotions and whatnot keep appearing over and over and over and over and over in CGI films. 2D as well. It's the same thing. But when we focus on acting, which again is a sort of parallel, peripheral discipline to animation, it gives us a fresh perspective about why animation works when it works. If all you do is copy the sort of idioms you see in the shows that you like, then you've done a good job of getting yourself to level 2, of consciously incompetent, bordering on level 3, and you can build a career here. You can build a career by just building on the norms that are expected in the animation industry, for the simple reason that there's a lot of content that's being created that really doesn't go any further. And that's okay, folks. That's actually okay, because you can do everything the standard way with nothing innovative at all in animation, but yet you can, on that same property, you might excel in your story concept, or you might excel with your voices, or you might excel with your comedy, or something like that. You don't have to be a revolutionary in the animation space in order for what you're doing to be good enough to be, a successful property. But when we look at the acting craft, we are actually looking at all this stuff too, right? When something's funny, for example, why is it funny? What just happened there that made it funny, that triggered us to laugh? Things like that. So, blah, 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 blah. Let's go back up here. Dave, you seen the critique of 11-second club submissions that Animators Island did? No, I tell you, Tom, I haven't spent any... I've glanced at that stuff, and I've heard about it here and there, but basically I don't spend any time with any of that. Like 11-second club, any of that stuff where people are doing that. I think it's good they're doing it. I think it's great. They should probably be doing it. And as you say, Tom, collaboration does challenge you. Collaboration, even among neophytes, even if you guys are all just, beginners or whatever, that's okay, because you're creating a climate that puts a certain amount of pressure on you to rise to the moment and do your best work. So I think that's where collaboration is always going to be beneficial. And when you're in that space, you're probably going to do better work. Partly because you're going to, we want to have the respect of those we respect, right? And so you're going to want to rise to that challenge, and plus when you have basically peers pushing and competing with each other, you know what? That's a beautiful thing, because over time, what's going to happen is you guys are going to each develop in your own areas, and I've said this before, but what happens is you get this little cluster of people. It's probably most applicable when somebody's like a teenager or something, but what you have is you have this little group of people, and out of that group of people, you're all friends and you're doing this thing, and then what's going to happen is somebody in the group is gonna get a break, and they're going to be successful, or they're going to be famous, or they're going to do something that's widely heralded. And when this person gets a bigger opportunity to put together a team in the professional space, who are they going to call? In many cases, not all, but in many cases, they're going to come back to you, and they're going to say, hey, listen, we had a lot of fun back here, and now I've got this opportunity, and we need somebody to do X, Y, Z. Would you be interested? And that is, in large part, in the entertainment industry especially, this is where opportunities come from. So I am not decrying the 11-Second Club or any of those collaborative platforms if you want to call them that people use. I think it's a really good thing. I don't participate because I'm focused just on creating my show, you know. So that was Amar's thing. That's great. I think it's great. Excellent stuff. Okay, and yes, Tom, I did know, I had heard about the collaboration thing, and at the risk of being the guy who sort of you'd think might weigh in or contribute, but who seems to be determined to sit on the sidelines, I think I'm going to sit on the sidelines. Especially because for me, my commercial business side of things has been kind of busy lately, and so I just don't really want to get involved in something else. You know, it would probably be fun, you know, yada, yada, yada. It'd probably be cool. But there's lots of things that are cool. There's lots of things you could do. There's always more to do, you know. So for me, I'm gonna stay away from that at the moment, and I'm still not really even spending that much time on Discord or, you know, whatever. Because my focus is on, I want to crank out these shows. I just want to crank out these shows. My whole life right now is this. I take care of my commercial customers, my business-to-business service customers. I create Salt and Light. Pretty much that's it. That's my life. You know, that's it. It's really all I want to do at this point. If Salt and Light ultimately doesn't wind up evolving as successful as I hope, then I'm just gonna try something else. You know, because I do want to develop entertainment properties in the animation space. I believe I have a voice to, you know, I've got something to offer to that space. So, you know, that's what I'm going to do. We're in the learning phase, not at the level you're at. Well, probably in some areas you're at the level I'm at. I'm sure you are. In some areas, you know, I don't know exactly what you're trying to do in terms of the actual project, but if it involves all of these things, writing, drawing, animating, painting, voicing, editing, post-production, and composing, then probably some of you guys are way past me in some of those areas, you know. So, oh, I see. So, yeah, if you mention something about it, I know what the heck you're talking about. Okay, with that, I think I am done. I really wanted to just contribute, speaking of contributing my voice, that's really what I wanted to accomplish today, is just kind of share some of these ideas, and hopefully somebody finds it useful, challenging, or inspiring. It could be all the above. Be aware in my dialogue, I hope you guys will all be here when I interview Ed Hooks. I expect to do it as a live stream as opposed to interviewing him. But what we'll probably do is set up a Facebook video call is the way it looks. Probably going to be next Saturday. In terms of the timing, he's in Portugal, Lisbon. And so it looks like probably next Saturday. Probably 10 a.m., might be 9 a.m., but somewhere in there, Eastern Standard Time, is probably when we'll do that. And the thinking is we're probably going to have a conversation and give it at least a half an hour. And if it's all going well and we're having fun, then we'll let it go as long as, you know, a couple hours or whatever. But I think you guys would get a lot out of it. And it is going to help your animation and your storytelling. And if you enjoy it, then by all means, I don't get anything out of plugging his book, okay? I could set something up so that I do, but at this point I don't, and I don't intend to. So, but his book is called Acting for Animators. It's been out for 20 years. He's working on the 5th edition right now. Or it's not Acting for Animation, I'm sorry. It's Acting for Animators. So that's his book. And again, we're working out the logistics of it, but I think it's going to be next Saturday. And it'll be the first time I've done an interview situation here on YouTube, so hopefully it won't backfire in various ways. But and Amar, you pointed that out before. Okay, so I watched his videos. It was an hour long on ArtStation. I'm gonna have to check that out. No, he speaks English. Wait, oh, I see. He's asking about Maria's Spanish and Little French. Got it. So. Anyway, okay guys, so that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out. Hope it's been useful. And if not, I'm sorry. And as you guys know, there will be more.